Oof, we got a little audience in there. See.
What do you say? We have a little audience?
I'm getting everybody in. They're slowly trickling in. There we go.
I'm going to change my. Why don't I see how to do that? I'm trying to change my. Why don't I see how to? I want to change the way my name appears. Do you know how? Isn't that in
Oh, so if you go to
participants? No.
like on if you hover over the top right corner of your face on the screen, there's three little buttons
Oh yeah, yeah.
or three little dots. You should be able to
Oh,
hit rename.
thank you.
I
Yep,
think.
there it is. I don't know why it doesn't matter.
So I think we're just missing Beth. I haven't heard from her if she's able to attend tonight or not.
Okay. So we have a quorum. So I think we should probably get started. I don't mind waiting if people would rather wait a few.
No, I think we should start.
Okay, so I call the meeting of the April 13th Affordable Housing Overlay District Committee meeting to order. And the first item is the approval of the March 16th minutes. Did anyone have any questions? Did everyone have a chance to review them?
Yep.
If no one has any questions or changes, do we have a motion to approve those minutes, please?
I move that we approve the minutes from the meeting of March 16th.
I'll second.
Thank you, Sarah. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's nice.
I abstain because I wasn't there.
Okay, noted. Thank you.
Are you taking notes, David?
I am taking notes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item is the approval of the final report to town meeting that Sarah nicely drafted. Joanne, you have a question? Your mic isn't
You're
on.
muted. You're on mute, Joanne.
No wonder you didn't hear me second. Okay.
I see.
I did not participate in writing it, so my name should not be on it.
If you vote on it, on recommending it, your name can be on it. So if you're.
Well, I don't feel I could do that unless I spent most of the week trying to get these copies, and I've really been working diligently to learn what you've been doing and where you are, but I have not
Could we,
digested this report.
I know there's a list of the different members, maybe and you said that Fiorella Badia, is that
Yes.
was supposed to be was originally on it. So maybe could you put in that parentheses, Joanne joined the committee
Well,
after.
it says that inside the report, but I don't think it should be on the front because I did not participate in writing it. And there are some sentences, like on page 3, it said, "We believe that blah, blah." I don't know if I believe it. I haven't digested it enough. So I just don't think it would be appropriate. Of course, going forward, we won't have this problem. I've been taking up a lot of Sarah's time asking questions. So I have been trying to catch up, but I'm on town
I mean,
meeting.
I feel like it's reasonable for Joanne's name not to be in the cover if that's Joanne's preference.
I agree.
Okay, did anyone else have any questions on the report? Okay. Does anyone have a motion to approve that for submittal?
I'll make the motion.
Thanks, Maxwell. Second?
I second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
this-
Oh, do you have a
this is-
question?
This is with the amendment that my name not be on the cover,
Right.
right?
I assume that amendment was uncontroversial.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
This
If
is,
anyone wants to object to that, feel free.
I agree with David. I don't think it's controversial, and I think the motion is to support the report as our final report, and without with that note that it's Joanne is not, or not including Joanne as at her request. Is that clear to everyone?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's not on the front cover, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Good, thank you. It does say inside who are members, and it said first Fiorella and then me, so people know who the committee is. But
Sure. That sounds good. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So did someone just raise their hand?
No, I didn't
Oh.
think I did.
Okay.
I think the AI saw you physically raising your hand and translated
Oh.
that.
Oh, no.
D-
AI is watching me.
Does anyone want the minutes to record them as abstaining? Or is it
We should
unanimous?
probably show that Joanne abstained. Did you abstain, Joanne, or did you approve
yes,
it?
I'll abstain if that
Okay.
makes it
I
clear.
don't,
I mean, it's up to you. I'm just trying to record it accurately for the minutes, and I wasn't sure.
Yeah, abstain would be, I think, appropriate. It's like when you don't go to a meeting.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, I think that's entirely reasonable.
So the third item on the agenda is whether the committee ever really had a chance to consider whether to have the zoning not site-based, but town-wide, as was the citizen initiative last year. And I think we've come a long way with looking at sites, but it would also be very good to just kind of have a clear sense of whether anyone still would like to consider a town-wide, everywhere approach. I don't think we have to spend a lot of time on it and reinvent the wheel if not, but I also felt like in fairness to the committee members and in fairness to the citizen initiative from last year, many of you, I think, were familiar with that because a couple of you are town meeting members. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I'm not inclined to make a big fight for it. I do feel like defining the zoning in terms of general criteria versus a specific list of sites, it sort of in some ways it does feel more unbiased or more like general. It's not like we're singling out these 10 parcels individually. We're hypothetically saying all B parcels above a certain size are included. There are, you could get a similar set of parcels without listing them out individually. Like I do feel like there's some appeal to me for that if no one else, and we could monkey around with like the parameters to get something that'd be similar to the list we've been talking about. If people feel like the list of individual parcels is better, like I don't feel strongly, but I think my original thought had been that it would be better to do something that would be more like zoning that kicks in at a certain size or applies to certain districts rather than an individual list of parcels.
I agree with David about that. I would at least like us to get public input on that approach. I think if the next section of what we're doing is public outreach and getting public input, I think there's kind of pros and cons to both, and I think it would be nice to explore that during the public comment process.
And also the meeting with the ARB. I think the ARB members mentioned that. I feel like Vince might have mentioned that. Now I can't remember for sure, but I think that was mentioned. It would take us a little while. That would be a rewrite. We'd really have to go through this bylaw and
I think that's also on the agenda too.
yeah, well, we should probably start thinking about that anyway.
Yeah. So I think that would be good to kind of get some feedback from the ARB. one of the rationales that was given for last year, well, when I say last year, I'm talking about 2025 annual town meeting, was that there may be a development opportunity and an adjacent property owner may be willing to sell a small lot next to it to provide sufficient on-site parking or to provide some desired open space for a tot lot or something for the development. And we can't anticipate every opportunity like that that could arise, that could make sense for the affordable housing developer. So that was, I thought, a very clear and rational explanation of why we would want to potentially have it allowed everywhere. The political downside or public relations challenges that people get very concerned about what does this mean everywhere in town. So we have to just be clear on what it does mean. It doesn't mean that that there are now going to be development proposals everywhere, because there are other controlling factors like you can't get light tech financing for development everywhere all at once. This is going to be a very incremental process.
I'm assuming that even if we do it in the sort of neutral criteria way, there will be some restrictions on, like, for example, the underlining zoning, etc., that'll make it pretty clearly different from affordable housing everywhere. And so I think if we go down this route, and we have criteria that sort of produce that result, like, it would be on us to like clearly explain, sort of where this would and wouldn't apply, and like, probably present like the parcels that qualify to town meeting, etc.
Yeah, I do think it, further to David's point, I do think in addition to looking at like what underlying zoning districts it might apply to, there's also things like minimum lot size, things like that I think would be relevant to, the things that kind of factored into the descriptors of what the parcels are that are currently kind of on the proposed list for consideration. I think there's the factors that drove the selection of those, I think, are maybe some of the factors we could tease out as factors that are relevant to what parcels it might be appropriate for, even if it's not a list,
I'd be interested to see, and this is something we can do in the next stage, about the overlap between what gets added by setting criteria compared to our list right now. That is, are we ultimately going to have a set of criteria that will produce the same list, or are there things that are going to get dropped or that are going to get added? Other than what I think Carol's point just a minute ago was really interesting about, other than the possibility, obviously, of lots being combined in different ways, which adds new things that would only apply under the rules-based or, list of criteria process instead of the specific properties. So if there's no difference between the two, I mean, I think that might be a question for the ARB of their preferred approach. I think the finite list is easier for people to understand, but the criteria will also produce a map that is all currently eligible properties. And it just, I think, is another step, though, to communicate to people about the potential effects and where things could be built, in addition to explaining the very slow process in which any of this would happen in the first place. So I'm sort of prefer the finite defined list of actual properties, unless there really is sort of a substantial difference in what would actually be included in the end.
So
I mean, it's worth
a little bit of study on that to analyze both. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's an important question, but if it was roughly the same, I think the finite list is easier to explain to people. We talked about this, I don't remember, maybe January, about people think about an overlay district as applying zoning to the whole town. And if it is to the whole town, then with criteria, it's different than sort of this very targeted zoning to the places where we think affordable housing makes sense for a whole bunch of different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And in that way, I think it's easier to say it's not just any property that meets this criteria, but these are specific places in town that are ripe for affordable housing if there was a developer with the finances to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's worth noting that if we go with a specific list of properties, then that would mean that if doing the lot join thing, an affordable housing developer could bring an article to town meeting to add something to the overlay. Obviously, that would add, maybe years late to the project, but in general, if the overlay already exists, then I'd expect that most petitions to add a similar site to the overlay would be likely to pass town meeting, and it would just add some delay to the project.
Sarah, couldn't that also be a special permit approach too, if they wanted, if there was a lot that could be reconfigured, that they could go to the ARB for a permit that way?
No, not to
So
rezone.
not to rezone. To rezone, it would
Okay.
have to go through the town
Have the
meeting
town meeting,
process,
okay.
which is kind of getting away from the idea of streamlining the process to make it easier to build. If you have to wait a whole year to get, a small
Right.
portion of land rezoned, and it's a risk because maybe town meeting says no. One
did-
approach that we could also consider, if, then this could apply townwide or however we wanted to structure it, but instead of picking out all the parcels, I mean, if we did it as just a zoning bylaw amendment, and we have an affordable housing section right now, and I mean, we could explore, if projects meet a certain size and there's certain, criteria that a project would have to meet in order to qualify. But I mean, you could also put, bonuses within like the affordable housing within the affordable housing section of the zoning bylaw. And then it's not necessarily, you can offer flexibility that way. And I think that's a little bit of what the ARB was talking about when they were suggesting maybe, Vince was talking about putting it into the MBTA overlay district, or maybe trying to work something into that, which I don't think the MBTA overlay is the correct location for an affordable housing overlay district, but
Yeah,
it's
but
just another option to consider if we did
I
enhancing
mean,
our section 8.2.
when I was like originally joining this committee, that's the approach that I thought would
Mhm.
make sense, is like, rather than defining new overlay districts, so basically add incentives for affordable housing that would apply potentially based on the underlying zoning, but sort of across the board. But as people say, there might be political downsides to that approach, and so I think there's some pros and cons.
I appreciate what Max said about how if you have a list of parcels, people can look at it and go, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. That could be developed differently, and that would be a plus for the community.
It's easier to visualize.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I think even if we went with like a general approach, we'd still want to like say, here are the parcels that would be affected to help people visualize.
Yeah.
But it does open up some room for fear mongering. It's like, well, they say that it only applies to these 12 parcels, but actually if XYZ happened, then maybe the other parcels would be included, like which is a pro in some ways, but could also be fear mongered about.
Joanne has her hand up.
Yes,
Oh,
it was.
Thank you. Hi, Julian. Sorry.
I'm just coming into this, so please inform me, but all the properties you're discussing are not town properties.
Right.
Like MBTA property is not, and the housing authority property is state property.
Mhm. And what are you saying? That you would like that to be included?
Not unless I know more about it.
I don't understand your point.
The point is, if you designate, let's say, Monotony Manor for an overlay with, it's actually state property, and it wouldn't. Can you do that? That's what I want to know.
Well, it's not on the list, right?
Oh, is it? I thought it was.
Is it?
I thought it was.
Right now, we have all of the housing authority properties on the suggested list. And that came-
Yeah.
My understanding is that it's somewhat a moot point in that the state isn't necessarily subject to local zoning, is my understanding.
That's right.
But so it doesn't necessarily make a big difference unless the state wanted to sell some of that property in some way. So I don't, that's something we could reconsider if we think that's unnecessary. But like in general, the assumption is not that this is going to be town-owned property. The assumption is that either the current property owner would redevelop or sell it to more likely sell it to an affordable housing developer if they wanted to. which would apply to like privately held property, not state-owned property.
Well, isn't the MBTA, that was a problem with one of the park, Whittemore Park, because part of the park was MBTA property. So someone was just suggesting, I think, the MBTA property in the Heights. Is that right?
No, I think the person who said that was referring to the MBTA Communities Zoning Overlay District that,
That's different, yes.
yeah.
Indeed.
Beth, you have your hand up?
I do. I had raised my hand because I thought part of the reason the housing authority properties were included potentially in the overlay was because a frequent tool used to redevelop and revitalize state and federal affordable housing is to do a redevelopment of those properties that involves tax credit transactions that usually involves, redoing the units on the property, rehabilitating the units on the property and potentially adding additional units. And in that case, the way those transactions are structured, they technically are no longer state-owned in that situation. And so the overlay would be helpful to those properties in that kind of a redevelopment situation.
Well, I've done some work on this with the board, the Housing Authority Board, and I'm not sure that's right, because one of the reasons developers like that is because it's tax-free, because it's state property, not town property.
But I think what Beth is saying, she's trying to explain, is that if any of the housing authority properties, if the housing authority had an intention to try to do any renovation or rebuilding, we would want the housing authority to have the ability to not have to go to the town and not be constrained if there was a possibility of building more units on the housing authority's property. And the housing authority, if the housing authority wanted to do that, we want to make sure that there isn't anything that's going to be preventing them from doing that.
Public housing since the 1980s by the state decided to go with private developers, and they're not allowing public housing to build any more units, which is different than renovating them. So it's
Right. So there's some repositioning, some, I don't know if the Arlington Housing Authority is considering this yet, but some housing authorities are repositioning their properties, and the ability to have broader zoning rights is very advantageous to housing authorities. So we want to make sure that we're not putting the Arlington Housing Authority at a disadvantage if in 10 years or 20 years, this would be helpful to the housing authority.
I don't know. Why don't I look into that and get back to people? But for instance, Winslow Towers violates town zoning. It's too high.
Right. I mean, I think this is sort of separate from like the general, state thing. Like, if the property continues to be state-owned, this is sort of like a moot point. It doesn't make much difference. If the housing authority enters in some sort of like public-private partnership in the future to get like LIHTC funding for redevelopment or expansion or something like that, then this could increase the options. And if the housing authority doesn't decide to do something like that, it doesn't limit the housing authority in any way.
Sarah, you have your hand up?
Yeah, Jack Nagel reached out to us, and he asked that all of the properties be put on there. I think everybody knows. But anyways, Jack Nagel is the executive director at the Housing Authority, so that's why all of those properties were added. I know you know who he is, but I know we have a couple of guests on.
No, he didn't ask the board whether they should be put on, so I'll bring it up at a board meeting.
Sure.
Okay.
We also did that with all of the Housing Corporation of Arlington properties because they had requested that as well. So
Yeah, but they're not
for consistency.
Profit in Arlington.
So I think what I considering what I've been hearing from the conversation on whether to have the overlay district apply townwide based on some criteria or the sites. What I suggest is if we were able to go back, I can go back and look at the criteria that we've kind of put into our slide deck and that we've been saying these locations all meet these certain criteria, and also see if there's an average square footage or acreage, and then to try to get to Max's point to see how that sifts out, how much overlap there is, and try to bring that back to the group. But I think that your expectation would be that we'd also be able to show that spatially, on a map. So I know it's a terribly busy time for the staff right now, but I think we would have to hear an honest. Why don't you consider, Sarah, when you think you'd have any bandwidth for doing mapping like that? And I'm sure it would depend on when I can. I don't think it would take much for me to summarize the criteria that we've been discussing. Some of them have been proximity to transit. You recall from the slide that's on the webpage. So
I think we have to, don't we have to kind of make a stab at that right now before we
well,
get
we can
started?
look at the
I mean,
slide.
it's two things really. It's looking at, I mean, to me, the mapping is, I don't know how much more work that is than just numbers, but I think we want to look at how many parcels we would have and under, if we did criteria, and maybe we would want to look at 10,000 square feet and 15,000 square feet or something like that, and distance from transit, but then also look at the list that we've created. And I mean, we have mapped that already, right, Carol? Haven't
We
we?
have mapped we mapped
Yeah, so
what
we don't
we've
have to do
already
that.
done. That's in the story map.
Okay, so
And
what you were talking about was then with new criteria, what would it look like to map that?
in addition to the criteria from November. So
Which criteria in November?
I'm just looking at the slide deck to get
I have something else while you're looking, if you don't mind, which is that I really want to add the churches in case that Yigbee bill passes.
yeah. So one of the churches is on 1/10 of an acre. I don't know.
Okay, well, we don't have to put that one.
There's a couple that don't make sense to add, but yeah, I made a list of all of those and I have to get those to Sarah to add. Yeah, I would love someone else who might be willing to take a look at the list to just be sure that I haven't overlooked any that actually has land.
I'll look at it.
I can send,
Okay.
well, I put all of the churches
you did?
into, yes, I don't have it mapped yet, but I have the Excel spreadsheet, just trying to like think of all the
Okay.
properties that we had talked about. And so I have a little bit of a lull right now because
good.
we got the reports for town meeting already printed last week, and then we don't have town meeting starting until the 27th. So we've got a little lull in my office, so I can get the mapping done hopefully in
Right.
the next month.
I mean, I guess the other key consideration is trying to get like a clear read on which approach the ARB would prefer, because I feel like getting ARB support is also crucial.
I'm not sure we're gonna meet with the ARB for a while.
After town meeting.
Yeah.
After town meeting. Yeah.
So
And we were also saying, so after town meeting would probably be June, but we were talking about maybe we should wait till July because we're getting a new ARB member in July. So maybe we should just wait till we have a that new person.
Yeah, I think that would make sense.
Because those are the people we're going to be going forward with. So it might actually be July.
Which I think is fine.
I know it seems like a long time, but it's April and that's only 2 meetings, like May and June, and then
Yeah.
July. So it's not that much. But then I'm worried about like not being ready for public meetings and stuff, and we got to hit the ground running. after
That'll be in the fall, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we don't necessarily need to wait on the ARB meeting to start getting ready for public, for public meetings.
Right, but we have
Um,
to know what we're presenting.
Well, but I guess I'm saying we could present both options to the public if we want to if we wanted to get some like read on what the public thinks,
Yeah,
as Beth suggested. So we can sort of do that regardless, but I do think the ARB's preference is also something we should be paying a lot of attention to.
absolutely. Agreed.
So these are the very broad overarching criteria we gave the ARB and we've been talking about these in prior meetings. It doesn't have to be limited to this, but these are some things we already agreed we have as.
Well, from the ARB discussion before, like it does seem like we want to at least consider like an underlining zoning criteria. Like at least some of the ARB seem to want it to not be any industrial properties. So we should at least consider what like underlining zoning we're including or excluding.
I'm not conceding that point yet. I think some of the
I'm not saying we
industrial
have to. I'm saying we
properties are
should
the
consider
best
it.
properties to renovate, to change, because I mean, many of you may know this. I worked for the city of Watertown for a while, and they had so much new development on old industrial parcels that just weren't viable with the old use, and it was I don't think Watertown has ever had an override, and that is why. Because they just had so much they were able to
I
generate.
mean,
new
to
development.
your point, near me, there was recently a new self-storage that was made on an industrial property, and a lot of the feedback has been, why are we building a big self-storage in a residential area? Like the way that like the people living in the area think about the property doesn't necessarily reflect how it's zoned legally. So, that could be an argument for like a lot of our current industrial property is basically surrounded by residential and could be a fine place to put a residential building.
Right. And I'm not saying all industrial, but I do feel like I would not want to eliminate all industrial either.
And
I think it's
actually
something we
think
want to think about, like because that could be a big source of difference between like our list of individual properties and a broad criteria. It could be if our like a list of properties may be maybe focusing on like things that are currently business zones or whatever. I don't know. I don't remember the exact.
Yeah,
So maybe
I think
my
we
best
did commit, or we did say we would try to stay out of the major business center zone area.
Right. Yes, we did. That's right.
What is
Yeah,
that?
so that could something that we either need to come up with a way of expressing in general criteria, or that could change between the specific list and the general criteria approach.
Well, if we're going to talk about zoning as part of the criteria, we can say, I think all the business districts are B3 and B5. Is that still true? Sarah?
I'm sorry.
All the business districts, the 3 business districts are either B3 or B5, right?
No, we have a lot of business districts.
Well,
I think
I don't mean
the
all the
center,
ones.
east,
Oh.
and the heights.
Just-
in the center. Yeah, it's B3 and B5 are mostly in the center,
Yeah, so we can,
mostly. But I mean, also, there's B2A, and I mean,
no, but
So
that-
those-
those
so
are
some
not-
of the sites
but
are
right
in-
next to it. I mean,
now
it's
we're gonna get into it.
Yeah. So I think some of the sites were in the miscellaneous business districts, but I don't think we had any sites in the business district that's in Arlington Center, except for St. Agnes.
Right, nor the
but those
height.
aren't in business districts. I mean,
Yeah, I didn't think so.
it's
Okay.
it's in the center, but it's not.
But it's not in the business zone.
right. Just like the Russell Common lot is zoned single family, but
Right.
it's technically in the center. So I would also just like to throw out that, I don't want to take industrial off the property, off the parcel list, because, a lot of the parcels over behind the Myrac dealership, or the old Myrac dealership, I've heard from a couple of redevelopment board members that they like the idea of, the residential, we could do affordable housing, but it's kind of tucked away off of Mass Ave. And it could kind of tie into the Artemis project that was done back there. So I think that there could be some consensus that some of the industrial properties might be good to include, even if it's affordable housing.
That's all
out
zone
there,
industrial right now.
but it's just not right. Yeah.
I agree with that.
Okay, great.
Okay. So just two things come to mind. One, between this meeting and the last one, Laura and Sarah and I were able to
Wait.
interview.
Are you getting off of the criteria? I'm sorry.
I don't have to,
Well,
we
I
can
think we
definitely
need to
talk more about the criteria.
I think we need to give Sarah direction about what the criteria are that we want her to look at. I don't think
So-
we really want to wait a whole nother month to do that.
No, I didn't know if there was more to, that we wanted to give her. So we've talked about the zoning. Do we have any more zoning?
Wh- Okay.
Underlying zoning, that direction that we want to give Sarah?
So we've agreed that not in B3 and B5. And that's the only thing we've agreed to. Right? Is that right?
I want to look at the sites list because I want to make sure we're not now saying that we're putting, or that
I hate to take it out because if there is a mixed use option with the affordable going above and somebody can do, I mean, there are so many unique deals that can get put together, and if there's a way to potentially do commercial on the ground floor, I mean, I think that that's what the ARB was concerned about, is losing the commercial space without having the residential above. They don't want just a fully residential building in a B5
I
zoning
mean,
district.
what one could imagine that we say that mixed use is optional, except in certain underlying districts, in which case it's mandatory. Like that's an option we can consider. I feel like I've been hearing from the affordable housing folks that mixed use is very difficult to make pencil in a way that makes anyone happy. So I don't know how much we want to focus on that.
But I do like how you phrased that, Zavid, and that's what I was thinking, that we could say that it's optional except for B3 and B5. So that we could include B3 and B5, so that if there was that unicorn who was able to do a really good mixed use light tech affordable housing development, we wouldn't be preventing it.
Mhm. All right. So then we're saying that zoning is not going to be a criteria, really, because am I missing something? I mean, what are we saying? Are we saying not?
Well,
Is there any place that we wouldn't allow it?
Well, I mean, the other thing we've said historically is that we're sort of avoiding residential displacement. So it sort of feels like to me, like, except for churches, we've mostly been avoiding, including like residential lots in the overlay. So like, I guess really what I'm asking is, if like someone buys several adjoining like R1 lots or several adjoining R0 lots, combines them and wants to build like an affordable housing development there, is that something we want our zoning to encourage, or something that we think is out of scope for our zoning?
I feel like since we have so many locations that are in need of redevelopment that wouldn't displace existing habitable residential structures, and since we have zoning that does depend on tearing down habitable structures, I think we can probably do with having this one not do that.
So then take out all R zones?
Well, except we want churches, which are mostly R1, so that's
Right.
a
Well,
little
I guess,
tricky.
yeah. I guess we can make an exception somehow. But I just want to make sure is that what we're saying? Take out all R zones.
Well, I think if we're if we're going to try to evaluate and map the everywhere one, it's kind of, you don't have to really map it, because if it's everywhere, but if we're trying to add to the sites version, to add B3 and B5, we had talked a while ago about having a clause in the zoning that would allow the addition of adjacent lots in a development proposal that where all of the other criteria are met in the site that's listed in the overlay district, so that we could anticipate and cover an affordable housing development that had that opportunity to add on an adjacent parcel.
I mean, I think the question is like, is the benefit of that worth the fear mongering potential of that?
Well, I think it's less disruptive potentially than saying that all residential properties could be. I think the
I absolutely agree with you. I think it would be much easier. I think that will make it easier to sell if we take out all the residential properties. I just don't want to miss any opportunities. I mean, I guess we need to look at that. Is it just R0?
When you're saying take,
Two?
okay,
Go ahead, Sarah. I'm
sorry,
sorry.
I just want to make sure. So you keep saying, so like, we're considering taking out the residential, but do you just mean R0 and R1?
Well,
Or are
I
you saying
don't-
like,
I don't know.
That's what
like,
I was gonna say,
I-
like, what's left if we take out all of the residential
Commercial and industrial.
industrial?
I mean, I
Take
think
out all the
our
Rs and then
current
the
list
business
of
and
properties
industrial.
is mostly business,
Which one of
industrial,
the
and
ARB
churches,
members
right?
doesn't want to see happen. So I
I
think we're
know,
gonna be really
but
stuck here, guys.
I was gonna say, I was
a lot
like,
of R1 and
don't,
R2 on the list.
don't, yeah, don't
We
the,
can't take this.
yeah.
I think we're seeing that this is going to be difficult because this is the other is more of a scalpel and this is more of a sledgehammer or a machete or something. You know what I mean? This when you have just these big criteria, you can't pick and choose the parcels. But the other method that we had done it originally, we really looked at every parcel and said, yes, no, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense.
So then maybe that's an option that we show when we're presenting this to the public for feedback, is like, here's a parcel specific that we went through and we found all of these lots that seemed like they were suitable for potential redevelopment. And then here's a broader, brush stroke of these parcels, any parcel that's, 15,000 square feet and, whatever criteria we're going to put in there, then they get a density bonus of, 1 story or 2 stories more than what is in the underlying zoning, something that's like similar to the overlay, but it's like, and then it's still parcel kind of zoning specific. So like if it's in an R0 district where the maximum height is 35, well, if they can only do 1 extra floor, then it's only, 45 feet, and it's not, it's better than nothing. And maybe in the business, I mean, there's like different ways that we can route it, but maybe we just
I'm
show.
gonna
the side by
suggest,
side.
I will try to write the zoning language that would give an affordable housing developer an opportunity to add adjacent land within some limitations for us to consider, and also for town council to say if this will work or not. I think it's time for the committee to have a chance to work on that and see if we can get to something that satisfies what we're trying to do, to make sure that we're not foreclosing that important opportunity to meet parking requirements, for example, by buying an adjacent parcel, but not having it so vague as to not pass muster for good zoning practice. So I'm writing that as a piece of homework for myself. I'm willing to try to get that drafted. So
We have a little bit of language in our multifamily housing overlay district where if you can 1 parcel in depth, you can upzone it to the MBTA, the
Right.
multifamily Mass
Multifamily.
Ave Broadway, yeah,
okay,
instead of
great.
neighborhood.
I mean, another consideration is that if we make the minimum lot size big enough, most of the parcels in the R0, 1, and 2 are not going to make it in anyway.
But the fact that we have
Unless they get joined together by a developer.
yeah, because we have so many where it looks on the ground like it's all one parcel,
Mhm.
but it's a patchwork of separate parcels that are in the R1 zoning, or I think we have another one that's R2. We've got a lot of those. Not a ton, but enough that it could be, we don't want to eliminate those.
Right. All right. All right. And then do we want to say a specific distance to transit? What was the thing that we just changed? The parking. Wait, what was it? That if you were within a certain distance to transit, that counted as a criteria for transportation demand management, meeting your TDM requirement? Like what was it was it?
I feel like
What
it was
was
like
it?
a 10-minute walk to major transit line, major
So
bus
what is
line.
that, half a mile?
I think so.
I mean, we allow a parking reduction in the zoning bylaw just on its own, so I don't think we need to be like more restrictive, but I mean, we could follow similar to the multifamily overlay where, you know, they have the ability to get an even more substantial waiver in parking as long as they meet certain transportation
what I
demand
meant.
management methods, but.
What I meant was one of the criteria that we talked about was distance to transit. What is the right distance? I'm trying to develop criteria that so that at the end of the day, we can say, this is how many parcels we're talking about and this is where they are.
I don't
And
know
so
that
one of them-
when we were talking about these criteria, maybe we are now talking about whether they're all threshold criteria. But when we were presenting them to the redevelopment board, and I mean, maybe proximity to transit is something nice, but I don't know if not having proximity to transit in an otherwise perfect location for affordable housing that met all the other, that was light tech eligible scale. I don't know if we would want to eliminate it from consideration if it didn't have a bus stop right nearby. So I guess my point is some of the criteria might be actual threshold criteria. Some of the other things might be just really great to have added pluses that make sense for smart growth, smart locations.
Like, I guess, yeah. What do people think about whether that should be a threshold criteria? Joanne?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, which is, I think, my place on this board, the perspective for low-income affordable housing. When I joined the board, the first thing I did was call up all the property managers. And I asked them, introduce myself, and I said, what is it that you're most in need of? Thinking it would be food, medical care, fire prevention. No, it was parking. And so I spent some time looking into this, and low-income people have jobs that most of us don't have. They need to get places at night. They need to deliver papers. They drive Uber for the Uber company. They clean houses. They are, as I said, this night cleaners in Boston that I know several mothers are actually work in bakeries. They have to be there at 3 a.m. So actually, I think low-income people need parking more than people who are 80% AMI.
And do they need buses? Because that's actually what we're talking about now is
Well,
proximity.
the MBTA doesn't get anyone anywhere in Arlington at 3 a.m.
But we're not talking about the parking requirement. We're talking
So,
about
Joanne,
whether-
are you saying that we shouldn't limit this to only properties near buses because many people are going to drive anyway, so it doesn't make sense to privilege locations near bus stops?
Thank you, David.
No, I'm just saying limiting parking. That's my issue. I don't know if that came up, but
I mean, nothing we're talking about limits the amount of parking a developer could
or
build.
just because they're near public transportation doesn't mean for a certain segment of the population they can get to their workplace.
Yeah, so nothing we're talking about would limit the amount of parking a developer could build. So,
Oh no, I just meant when we're thinking about the MBTA, this isn't London or Japan. the MBTA doesn't go everywhere. So we should keep that in mind.
Sure.
It's helpful for some people to get to their 9 to 5 job in Cambridge or Boston. But
So it sounds like, Joanne,
Okay,
you don't think it would necessarily need to be
they can
a
get enough parking.
limiting criteria, threshold criteria to make sure that it's close to.
I think it's a consideration, but I don't think I think number of parking spaces is more important.
Okay. Right. So, I think we know what we need to do. Am I dreaming? What's the general sense of the committee at this point about being able to prepare enough information for us to get feedback on an approach that compares what we've currently been discussing, plus these overarching principles, criteria. And, what we could do is, I feel like we still would like to have a sense of how much land a developer would have to control to be eligible to use this.
I mean, it depends. I mean, unless we can give Sarah like some very specific criteria, just take a stab and say, then she can't do it until then we have to wait another month. I'm kind of pushing because I want to know, I want to start. If we're going to talk about this, I want to start being able to compare.
Mhm.
At the next meeting, I want to be able to have more information than we have now.
So how would you describe we have alternative one, which is what we've been talking about with the
Right.
sites list. And
I would take a stab and say either 1,500 or 12,500, something like that, or maybe both. Or we could go down to 10. We could go 10. And if it's easy, Sarah, to do more than one,
Mhm.
then I would
So
say do like
10,000, 12,000, 5, and 15.
and 15. Do you guys think that sounds reasonable?
but
As a minimum
won't
lot
that
size.
won't that potentially eliminate some of the lots that are redevelopment candidates that are the patchwork collection of adjacent lots?
Well, we could
Oh.
frame it as
Oh, you're
the
saying
minimum
because-
size for a development, even if it's made up of several adjacent lots. The total, or doing it based on the total size,
Or under
not
like
the
the
size of
same.
each lot.
I mean, I could easily I could include lots that are under same ownership that are just separate lots.
Right.
But
That
yeah,
would
I don't know if I
be-
could go like arbitrarily.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not expecting you to do that, but I'm just
Rough.
saying that if we did the criteria-based approach, then
Mm-hmm.
later on, if someone purchased lots, then they could find lots that aren't on Sarah's list that could be really developed on the criteria-based approach.
And I think it would be rough, and we know that. So do what's easy, fairly easy.
I'll put on my
Don't cherry
professional
pick.
planning hat here. Okay.
Yeah, what do they call that? Data, whatever. Yeah, I think if we're going to consider this other approach, we just need that information.
Yeah, okay. So Sarah, when you it's slide 14 on the November 2025 slide deck that we presented to the ARB.
Okay.
So on the next item, we're talking about other things in the draft bylaw we want to reconsider. I definitely would strongly recommend that we don't use the environmental design review standards. I've been thinking a lot about the problems with site plan review since the MBTA communities have been adopted in so many communities, and to see the way that we have a problem with site plan review throughout the Commonwealth, and it's kind of reflexive for most communities to apply it as though it's special permit, and it's not supposed to be anything like a special permit, but over time it has become a bit of a monster. So I know that the community next door that has a great deal of success with affordable housing overlay district does not use site plan review. They use something that they call planning board advisory consultation. And I think that that would be very helpful to this zoning if it did not use EDR and if it did not use site plan review. I would like to ask if some of you are willing to take a look at the advisory consultation. I can send it to you because we don't have to copy it, but just to familiarize yourself with it as a contrast to environmental design review and
Yeah.
the site plan review process.
Yeah, I'd like to see that. Or maybe you should just send it to everybody.
I'd be happy to.
But I'd be happy to look at that for the next meeting with you or not with you.
Yeah, because I think
Whoever
I think
wants.
we now have this luxury of time a little bit. I agree, Laura, that we don't, every month goes by.
Time passes, Carol.
Yes, yes, and I very much appreciate that you keep that perspective available to me. But I think that to David's credit, he put this together when we thought we had something that we were going to be shopping to the ARB and bringing to town meeting on a pretty tight time frame. But I think we do have a duty now to take a look and see what really would make sense for the town of Arlington, and not necessarily to just borrow the city of Cambridge's or some other community that, like, I know Brookline is a little kind of probably a pace with us. Maybe they're a little further along, but I think we have this opportunity to customize this so that it really works for affordable housing, and that it doesn't just kind of adopt some of the issues that we've been having with site plan review for a long time in Massachusetts, and that we're trying to reform. So I'll send that to you. The ordinance itself is worth taking a look at, but I just don't want people to get too bogged down. So I'll send both, but it's the advisory consultation that I think would be the alternative to EDR. So just let me make a note to myself so I don't forget.
I was thinking also maybe for the next meeting, we could ask everybody to look at the draft bylaw that we submitted to the ARB and just see if there are things we want to tweak. We might want to look at the mixed use again. And I think there were a handful of things that we thought, well, maybe given more time, we might want to propose this differently.
I'd also like us to be open to having a discussion about design guidelines. The city of Cambridge does have some very accessible design guidelines that aren't super prescriptive, but I think that helps both the public, it helps the developer, and so I think it's something that makes sense for us to consider. So
I think that might be a good companion to if we're not doing EDR, because I think like one of the things that the ARB sometimes does in EDR is provide feedback on like architectural aspects of the project to make them fit in better in Arlington, or to correct, to address flaws. If we can have like clearly written design guidelines to sort of get ahead of that and help developers do things that will fit in well from the beginning, then that's more efficient for everyone and reduces the need for EDR.
So there is, I know we're saying like EDR or the planning about, but I mean, site plan review is kind of like the in-between. The ARB is still getting very used to the idea of site plan review and not having the same controls that they have under EDR. I would echo that design guidelines that are specific for these types of developments would be probably crucial to the ARB being comfortable to give up even more of their input on projects if we weren't even proposing a site plan review. So I would just think let's look at, but site plan review, I think, is what, just speaking from staff and working with the ARB, like taking my own personal, thoughts out of it. Like, I think the ARB would be very uncomfortable going with less review than a site plan review, which they're getting better about. They're understanding that, you know, what site plan review is and why it's different from their environmental design review. So just to throw that out there, they are
Yeah,
improving.
Get it. I totally get it. One of the,
Does,
go ahead, Maxwell.
sorry, go ahead.
Well, one of the problems with site plan review is that it's not in state law, so there's no deadline, and that can be very abused. And it can be an accidental abuse too. I heard a board, and actually, I won't go into telling tales out of school, but it can be abused, and it can be very hard on and expensive and costly for developers if a board drags site plan review on. I don't want it to, you know, I don't think anything should be special permit, but at least with special permit, there's a time certain for action on the special permit granting authority. Max?
I was just curious, Sarah, does the town have guidelines for buildings of this size already for the things we just incorporate directly, right? We don't need to reinvent the wheel here.
We do, and they're a little bit outdated, not outdated, but you know, they haven't been done in about 10 years. So I know that the planning department got a CPA grant to look into doing an updated design guidelines, which we're going to work on this year, which would include more of the taking into account like the multifamily housing overlay district and, you know, incorporating more mixed use. So I imagine it could be very similar to what we would be trying to propose with affordable housing, with the density bonuses. And so we can certainly, I can certainly put in a word with the planning department.
You got CPA grant for that? I think my computer just froze.
We're looking at these design guidelines to see.
Sarah's did.
Oh, Sarah.
It's
Sorry,
very
I think
tough
I froze.
after a
I
day.
know. I'm sorry.
It's
And then
okay.
a lot of working people at the house right now.
Oh, okay.
So
that was a
my
CPA
Wi-Fi is
grant?
crazy. So we did get a CPA grant a couple years ago. Yes.
Oh, interesting.
And then just one other question, do the design guidelines go into the bylaw itself, or are they like an addendum that can get modified and all, and the law
It can be
bylaw
done
doesn't
either
change?
way. There are pros and cons to each approach. I don't recommend them going into the zoning bylaw.
I've never heard.
But they're not, I mean, ours are recommended and they're advisory, but I think our town council has concluded that we can't bind a project to something in the design standards, or we can't make it a condition that they have to, you know, abide by them 100%. They're just
So-
recommendations.
So then, I think what both Carol and Sarah are saying makes total sense about design guidelines. How much do we have to worry about them for our purposes of getting this bylaw done? If it can just be a recommend, like saying like there will be guidelines, you know, that will be issued by the planning department or the ARB, whoever votes on them in the end.
That's always a question, because if you say you're going to design guidelines that come after the zoning is passed, or regulations that come after the zoning's passed to implement the zoning, it's kind of a matter of faith for some people think, well, we want to see them first. And so it can sometimes be easier to pass town meeting if the guidelines are in hand, but I don't think it's mission critical to having them in hand, but I think it can help get the zoning passed.
I think the question is if someone, the ARB, feels strongly about the design guidelines, like making a difference in their recommendation or whatever.
Yes.
I think they're going to be thinking about it a lot because we are doing a design guideline project with the ARB for this year. So I imagine it's going to be very much on the forefront of their minds.
But that's perfect timing,
Good.
because then we don't have to do it, but it gets done and we can pass it all together. Yeah, because I know I don't know anything. I have no ability to do that particularly.
Does town meeting vote on design guidelines?
No.
The
Okay,
ARB would adopt them, I think.
that's good.
So
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, it's 7:06 and I should allow some time for the public, but I also wanted to ask the committee if there were any questions, if everyone had had a chance to see the summary from the meeting. Sarah and Laura and I really interviewed the director of assessments, and we were quite interested to see that apartments, even affordable, after you discount for affordable apartments, are better for new growth in the tax base than any other land use, which is quite interesting and quite helpful to us. So if you, that went out a week ago or so, if you have questions on it, let me know. Or Sarah or Laura know. So is there anything else before we ask for public comment? Do we need a next meeting date, or do we have that?
We should. What are we, Sarah, with the second Monday?
So if we were gonna do, yeah, it would be May 11th.
How's May 11th look for everyone?
May 11th, okay.
So
Isn't that
I
town meeting?
have, so it's town meeting, and we also have a redevelopment board meeting that day, so we'll be meeting at like 6 p.m. I think with the redevelopment boards. I wouldn't be able to attend. I would say Mondays and Wednesdays are probably
Terrible.
I guess Wednesdays maybe is a little bit better.
Is there a reason?
For town meeting, or we do it a different day. But I'm not on town meeting, so I don't want to take somebody else's. I am attending all the town meetings, but
I think most of us on the committee are in town meeting.
Yeah.
do you guys want to do it like cram all into one night, or do you want to have a third night of public hearings or meetings?
I was going to suggest we wait and have our next meeting after town meeting concludes in June.
So skip a May completely?
Unless there's an urgent need for one, that'd be my proposal. We're all going to be in 6 hours of town meetings.
Yes.
Fine with me.
So I might be in contact with Sarah and Laura to do some of this follow-up work we've been talking about, which
I think we need to map out also what we need to do and answer that question.
Yeah.
Whether we can wait till June. Maybe we can if enough stuff happens in between.
Yeah. We also met with Alan Jones from the Finance Committee, and that was helpful too. So there's some follow-up work that we can do on that point, that I plan to do for the committee on that point. And Laura is going to be very helpful to me on that.
I think, I'm just still thinking about the schedule. Like maybe we could do 2 meetings in June. I know I'm away for a good bit of June, but you could meet without me. I guess if we really want to meet with the ARB in July, then we do have some things that need doing first. But I do understand because
Do you want to say the first Monday in June then? Or no, I'm worried town meeting's not gonna be done by then. How about June 8th, which is the second Monday? We can tentatively schedule the meeting for then. And if we somehow get all kinds of work done ahead of time and we want to try to meet in May, then I can send out a doodle poll to everybody. And if there's a chance to meet,
right.
then we
Okay.
just schedule it and notice it accordingly. But
Okay.
otherwise we just plan for
For June 8th.
All right. And Sarah, I'm happy to sit down with you till
6 p.m. just in case.
I'm happy to sit down with you to help you with the criteria and trying different experimental combinations.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sounds good.
So we'll do a lot of work in between. So everybody needs to look at the bylaw and just decide what you're happy with and what you're not happy with. Because we need to, if we're going to make changes, we need to work on that too.
But I hope everyone would look at the Cambridge ordinance and design advisory and guidelines before you take your critical look at our draft zoning.
Good idea.
I think it would be helpful.
Could Sarah send that out to us, the Cambridge?
I'll be sending that out to everyone.
You, okay, good.
Okay. Did Joanne get on to the
Were you able to log in, Joanne?
What?
Were you able to get into the folder?
It's just easy. I'd rather spend my time now catching up than trying to
Sure.
get.
I'm just saying we have all the stuff. We have all of those saved in those folders. Like there's backup research for the different municipalities. So it's all saved in a folder.
I should probably
But
talk to you and you could give me the
Sure.
card. Thank you.
You can give me a call tomorrow.
You've done a lot of work in 1 year.
Good. Yeah. Carol?
Yes.
All
Okay.
right.
Carl, hello. Why don't you start us off with public comment, please?
Hi, thank you. I'm Carl Wagner. I live on Edge Hill Road, and I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 15. I've been following most of these meetings since you started having them after town meeting did not approve Article 41, and the ARB last year did not support Article 41. Instead, I remind everyone watching this and you that this group is a motion to commit to study how such a thing could be done in Arlington. And about 15 minutes ago, Carol said that there is an opportunity to customize something that works for affordable housing. That is one of many stakeholders that should be considered before anything like this goes forward. We have an opportunity and a requirement to customize Arlington for the businesses and the residences here, as well as for all the financial, open space, parking, low income, that sort of thing, aspects of any proposal like this. I commend the committee for including Ms. Preston. She is a breath of fresh air. It's nice to hear finally a voice from the actual low income housing community. I remind people watching that the six of you are advocates for low income development, and the inclusion of actual AHA people, or in this case, Ms. Preston, is going to, I hope, dramatically change the tenor of the conversation. Finally, I would point out that in addition to increasing a broader stakeholder group, that is people who are in Arlington as well as you six, I think it's very important to note that your presentation in November does not really point to how disruptive to residential and business districts the size and dimensions and setbacks are. And an honest conversation would have much more explanation of what is in your warrant article, because we're talking about many more floors, very little parking. We're not talking about open space at all, I believe, and we're not talking about setbacks. So neighbors are going to be offended by the size and shape and type of buildings and the lack of parking for the poor people who have to live in these buildings. I think you really need to bring back Arlington and let them join you in the beginning stages to figure out how to do something like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comments? Let me see if I see any hands raised. I don't see any hand raised. Am I overlooking anyone? Okay, I guess not. Well, thank you, everyone. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night, Carol.
Toodles.